Talk Story with Kyden.
Salutations, and welcome to Talk Story with Kyden. I'm Kyden, and today I'm joined by Theon Weber and Angie Royniotis. Tell us a little bit about your folks' role in this upcoming production of Caesar.
I'm the director of Caesar here at the Palace Theater. It's an adaptation of William Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, Tragedy of. It's all Shakespeare's words, but I edited and abridged and condensed and adapted it for the Palace, where I think it really fits for reasons that I guess we'll get into. Mostly what I do is I just get asked questions by the people doing the work on the show, and then I try to answer them as best I can, and I've been having a great time.
I'm also having a great time. I am the stage manager for the show, and I am also the costume designer for the show. And I've done a little bit of social media and advertising for the show as well.
So tell us a little bit about what this show is about and how does this multimedia aspect help tell that story?
It was an old story when Shakespeare told it. It's about what is now a 2066-year-old political assassination of Julius Caesar, who had become dictator of Rome. And it's a play about politics in the sense that half the characters are politicians, first of all, and the characters who aren't politicians are people listening to political speeches and feeling one way or another about them. And it's a play about being in public, honestly. And it's also a play in which you see people's private selves, you see their public selves, you see what people want and the reasons they give for their actions, and you see where their actions actually lead, which is not always the same place. And we use the screen to show you news broadcasts, interviews, people FaceTiming with each other, anything that is mediated by a screen, right, in our time. We imagine the Romans mediating via a screen. And the gaps it opens up between what you see on stage and what's transmitted on screen it's very relevant to the play's themes and to the experience the play creates of being part of this civic polity and responding to stuff that happens and the way that things that happen are represented. And it's a really recognizable kind of way to live, more recognizable than a lot of other Shakespeare plays, because these people, they're Republicans, small r Republicans, right? They vote for their representatives. They think of themselves as free members of this community of equals, except for all the slaves and the women. But they think exactly the same thing about themselves that we think about ourselves, right? We used to have kings, but we don't have them anymore because we freed ourselves. That's exactly what the ancient Romans thought at exactly the time that they were, collapsing into to rule by one man. And it's just an intensely recognizable time. And the technological apparatus makes it more recognizable. And it just suits the play very well, I think.
One other thing that's really cool about the multimedia aspect is that for people that do know the story of Julius Caesar, which is a more, well-known story, whether it's Shakespeare or just the history of it, what's cool is that we get to give you this aura of Rome and a backstory and some other creative elements that the multimedia provides that I just think are really cool. They're really creative. They're really well thought out. There's like all these little hidden Easter eggs and stuff about ancient Rome or things that are in Latin that, it just adds another dimension to it.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun with the world building.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, world building is
Alrighty, and tell us a little bit about your folks' challenge that you faced throughout the process thus far.
Any challenge is entirely our fault because the production has a lot of layers. It has 2 live camera crews. It has a whole pre-recorded element that we filmed over several weeks, essentially like a movie with location shoots and a lot of extras, and it incorporates all of that live, and a lot of stuff has to go right in a row for the show to work. But I like having a layer or an extra couple like layers of something that we haven't done before around a show like this, just because it keeps it interesting and it keeps the shows different. So it has been a challenge to get everything working logistically, but we knew it would be, and we joked about it from the beginning, and we've actually been pretty lucky so far.
Yeah, there's been a lot of challenges, and a lot of them have just involved the massive, all the components of this show. For me specifically, stage manager means that I'm managing all of these people, and this is a big cast. We have about 30 people in the cast. And then, if you add in all the extras, there's so much coordination that had to happen, so many different levels of coordination and just really clear communication that I have had to try and keep up. And there's been challenges there. There's been a lot of lessons learned, but I think overall, this show has kept us on our toes with everything that we've had to keep track of.
But it's been so nice because the energy has been really positive. Like the cast has been really happy. The crew has been as happy as can be expected. And it's just been a fun thing to do in the evenings, or also all day if you're Angie and me, and that's a really good sign. I mean, we're a week and a couple days out from opening now, or a week and a day out from opening, and one of the reasons I'm feeling good about the whole production is that the sound of people's voices has been happy, and I think people are having a great time. I think that the complexity of it is something that people are enjoying. It's been really fun to. I mean, we've done a lot of theater and a lot of community theater, and a lot of people in the cast have too. We've got some people who've never done anything, which is I think is an essential part of any community theater Shakespeare show, and I'm really happy about that. But we've got a lot of veterans who've done a million shows here and elsewhere, and it was fun to hear them on the film set when we were shooting in the Palace lobby and in a few other places, where they were just, it was so new to them, and it was so cool to be on a film set, which was also how I think we felt.
Yeah, I mean, our goal has been to try and have a base level of professionalism, because we know how involved this was going to be from the start. And so I think coming from the start and showing that we have this film date, we have this schedule, we have, we're trying to do things. It is a community theater production, but we're trying to run it a little above that. And so I think that the engagement that we're getting back from everybody, the cast and the crew and all of our extras and all of our other, all the other help we've had, they're engaging right back, and they're meeting us at that level. And so the hard work that we're putting in, we're seeing it now too from them. Yeah.
Well, just hearing it alone, it definitely sounds like a fun process to be a part of, and we are very fortunate enough to have a little clip of some of that. Check out this behind-the-scenes clip of Caesar's rehearsal.
People and senators, be not affrighted, fly not, stand still. Ambition's debt is paid.
Go to the pulpit, Brutus.
And Cassius too. Where's Publius? Talk and understanding. Publius, good cheer. There is no harm intended to your person, nor to your
And you folks have mentioned and brought up the aspect of filming and whatnot, integrating that into a live performance. Did that change the way that you've had to approach your jobs as production members, directing and managing and whatnot?
As a director, it's mostly been another layer, because another thing that's nice about this is we'll have rehearsals where at least all of my focus ends up being on some technical aspect, on getting the camera working or doing something new with the lights or something, or even in earlier rehearsals, just in moving around. There's like a 30-person cast, like Angie said, and they don't just go on and off stage. They go all over the house. They come in from the lobby. They come in from the sides. They sit in the audience. They get up. So some rehearsals were mostly about that, about moving people around through the lobby and creating this environment, that the show would take place in. But then there were other rehearsals, and as we do full run-throughs every night, both of these elements are in every rehearsal, where I'm just focused on 3 people, 4 people, 2 people, 1 person on stage doing Shakespeare, and which I really enjoy doing. And that's always been there, and it hasn't changed much from doing other Shakespeares or from doing simpler shows. It's just all this stuff has been added around it. So I haven't felt like I've lost anything, and that's been nice.
I'll speak specifically to being costume designer, which is a first for me. The challenge was that our filming schedule was a month before opening, and those all have to be, continuous. We had to have continuity between that and the show, which meant that I had to have full costumes done for a bulk of our cast a month in advance. Whereas a normal community theater production, we're like trying on costumes on Tuesday or Wednesday before the show.
Putting them on right now. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but on the flip side of that, it's been great because now that's one hurdle that's already, passed, and we have that totally dialed in now. And so we're able to focus on the smaller, finer details and keep working with actors closely, as we get closer to the show. Yeah.
And this is your folks' first time performing here in the Palace Theater for Shakespeare, no longer in the park. How has the change of scenery affected the atmosphere of the backstage folk and whatnot?
I love Shakespeare in the Park. I've done Shakespeare in the Park, I think, like 8 years, 9 years. I'm not sure. And I'm going to do it another 9 times as an actor, as a director, as whatever they'll have me as. And that's a very unique space that's really, it's like nothing else, and it's also harder in ways that if you've only ever worked in a theater, you really can't imagine. And that's one of the pleasures of it, just like one of the pleasures of it is also an audience that consists of anyone who happens by and stops and maybe moves on, but maybe stops for longer. Like, it's a completely different kind of experience, but I've never done Shakespeare in not just in the Palace, but in a theater before. I've done a lot of Shakespeare in the Park, and that obviously the advantages of a theater are obvious. It's dry. I often do lights, and the major advantage of having a venue is you set the lights up, and then they're just there for like a month. It's extraordinarily decadent. Yeah, I'm used to you put them up and then you take them down, and then the next day you put them up and then you take them down, and you point them where you want them every time. But these you set and you leave. And that's kind of synecdoche for the whole process. Everything is easier. Having control of the environment is easier. Aesthetically, being in this space, like this was a show that wouldn't have worked in the park because the audience needs to feel like they're inside a like completely enveloping like environment. And they need to kind of imagine that they're in the 21st century ancient Rome that we're trying to put them in, and imagine that the theater is the theater of Pompey and not the palace, and the palace. And that can't be done in a space that's just by its nature, like infinite, right? You don't have control over what the audience sees, what the audience hears. You're blending with the world, which is great, but it's nice to have a fanatical degree of control sometimes too.
Yeah, I've only done one Shakespeare in the Park. I was in Much Ado in summer of 2023. And so I don't have as much experience with it, but I will say that, from seeing the contrast between that and this production, this is a production that we could never tell in the park, like Theon said. It's so unique, and the immersiveness that the Palace creates for this moment, for Caesar's moment, is going to set it apart from people who have seen Shakespeare in the Park, people who have been, diehard, Shakespeare in the Park fans for years. This is going to be a totally new experience for them.
And you were talking a little bit about like the immersion of the show. Is there any specific aspects aside from like the live camera feed and whatnot that you can talk about?
We only have so many surprises, so we shouldn't talk about all of them. But it's just that being able to have things happen, not just on stage, and the camera is part of that, because normally, even if you're in a theater, the problem with having stuff happen that's not on stage is because the audience is looking at the stage. They're not looking over there, and they don't want to do that. But with the cameras, we can show you stuff that's behind you, and you can see it in front of you, and we can show you whatever part of the building we want to at any given point. And so it just expands the stage to fill the house, so that the aisles and the tunnel and the seats, those are all part of the fictional space. And it's as simple as maybe someone sitting next to you will turn out to be a diehard Caesar supporter or a diehard Caesar opponent. Or maybe the police will take an interest in you, where you're sitting. It's just small things, but it's things that make the audience hopefully feel like they're living in the city that the show is about. And not every Shakespeare play is this much about being in a crowd or being a citizen of a place, or being in public. There's so many crowd scenes in this, and there's so many scenes that are specifically about public opinion and what it's like to be living in a particular place at a particular time. It really lends itself to that embracing of the audience and trying to bring them into the fiction. And the cameras are what allows for that as much as the venue, honestly.
And now to see what we're talking about, here's a little snippet clip piece from the filmed aspect of Caesar. So throughout the process, community theater is a very communal, obviously, but it's a very, you have to want to be there. So as part of the production team, what do you folks find the most rewarding about the process thus far?
Angie?
The most rewarding thing about production, about being on the production team.
Yeah, about just being a part of this too. Whatever you feel tickles your heart, makes you feel some type of way, a flutter in your eye.
I mean, seeing the cast be as excited as we have been from the start, increasingly they've become excited as they watch all these elements come together. And that's what's really cool about Tech Week in particular, is that, in any show, not just this one, but, the most exciting thing is that you start to feel more like you're in this universe, and your character comes to life. And then also, too, they start to see all the visions that we had seen from the start or had hoped for, including like the live cameras or, there's...
No, that second thing, absolutely, because throughout this whole process, like it's been amazing that people came along with us on this, and the actors have been 100% invested the entire time and have been like bringing like great stuff to their characterizations. But when you can tell that until just a couple days ago, the only people who really knew how the show worked were me and Angie. And people would believe us when we said things. We'd be like, oh, yeah, well, no, you don't need to worry about that because there's going to be a thing on screen. So, and they'd be like, what? It's on screen? Yeah, it's on screen. It'll be on screen. And it's only in the past couple of days that, like, no, now we can run the show, and we've seen the actors being like, oh, no, I see how this works. That wasn't just we'll fix it in post cope from Theon and Angie that whole time. And seeing their excitement about that has been great. As far as like community goes, the thing that I've felt was rewarding about this, or that I'm even like, that I'm happy I've done, is I've done other shows where I've tried to do a lot of things myself, and I've just been like, well, I can, I'll design a few props, and like, I'll make some set pieces. Here, I found some styrofoam, and I found some styrofoam, and I got some paints from Ben Franklin, so I'll do the set, and we'll save. That way, we won't have to get someone to do the set. And that has not been a particularly effective, really, way to manage things. And one of my plans with this, as much as well, this will be the show where we use cameras, it was also like, well, this will be the show where I get someone to do everything, where I find someone who's good at each individual thing, and then they do it. And now it's backfired slightly because about 6 of those people are Angie, but we found there's half a dozen other people too, and everyone has been like the stuff that people have done in their respective departments, like Roselio Hernandez, who directed, his show title is assistant director, but really what he is he directed the movie segments. And Cameron Verbarg, who's the cinematographer for those segments, and Jojo Guevara and Malik Gurley, our armorer and our weapon designer, respectively. Like, every time we wanted something cool in the show, we found someone who could make that much cooler than we could, and that's a much better way to do shows than I personally had for no reason been doing before, and that's been extremely rewarding, just to see what people have been bringing to the show.
And having been in like the both production and the cast aspect of community theater, would you say that any of like your acting experiences throughout your years performing in various shows affected the way that you've approached how to talk to the cast or how to manage them and whatnot?
Well, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I mean, there's all kinds of ways to direct, I'm sure, but you can tell that I act too, because I can't stop getting up on stage and standing there and being like, well, maybe if you're more sort of, then and like feeling it out in exactly the same way that I would if I were an actor. And I think, I don't know, I find it easy to work with actors, and it's just because, like, if you know what their problems are because you remember having them, and if you're used to, if you know what a show looks like from standing on stage instead of sitting in the audience or being up in the tech booth or being backstage, if you know what it looks like when you're standing there as an actor, then it's easier to help them solve problems. So that's the only thing I'm bringing to it, honestly, is being able to do that. I'm sure it's similar for Angie.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an actor first and foremost, and I have not stage managed since high school. So this is very new for me, but I was really excited to do it because I have had many experiences with stage managers, some great, some terrible in my, experience. And I always said to myself, wow, if I ever step into a role like that, like I want to do it differently. Like I learned what not to do or what to do. And so I am I'm really grateful that I'm actually getting an opportunity to do it with a show that is as rewarding as this one and allows me to, really flourish in that way.
Putting back on the acting caps and whatnot, what would you say, thinking back on I had this great director when I was in high school or great stage manager, what type of characteristics come to mind when thinking back on those type of people?
Kindness.
No, both of those roles, director and stage manager, it's like a major thing you're doing is creating an environment for everyone to come and work in. And the work that they're doing is strange and can even be, it is embarrassing and uncomfortable. Not because you're doing, incredibly edgy stuff even. Just coming and pretending to be someone else with a bunch of other adults is weird and awkward. And creating an environment where you don't feel weird and awkward and where you're comfortable to try things and you're comfortable with your own ideas and you're not afraid to have them, and where you don't hate or feel smothered by the ideas of the people in charge of the show. All of that is what makes you give a good performance instead of a strangled one. And especially in community theater, it's what there'd be no other reason to do it if it didn't feel like that. So I think Angie's right that's the number one thing. And the stage manager, by the way, for the uninitiated, I'm not just being cute when I say that Angie's doing all the work. The stage manager does all the work. That's what the stage manager is. The logistics of everything and the organization and corralling everyone, especially in a show this big, and making sure the departments are talking to each other, right, and talking to the director. All of that is a huge amount of work, but it's also work that creates an environment, not just at rehearsal, but what kind of emails are you getting? And how useful are they? And when do you get them? And do you feel like you can send emails about your problems? And all of that is an environment created by the stage manager, and it has to be good.
It gets overwhelming fast, and so I think kindness goes a long way. My prompt book, which also for the uninitiated is where the script is, where everything lives, where every single informational thing about the show lives, the stage manager carries around like a Bible, has a bumper sticker that I put on the front of it that says, "Be kind." And that's my mantra, and that comes back to us, and it's been seen all the way through. Yeah.
So, fun fact, everyone. This March officially marks Theon, our lovely lighting tech guy of the Palace, his 10 years here. So did you ever find yourself thinking, when you're on the night stuff, I wanted to be in something here, I wanted to put something on here?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not just since being on the night staff. I grew up here, I went to Hilo High, and I used to walk down here after school when my mom was the executive director decades ago. It must be decades ago if I've been here for a decade. And even then, I was like, I wanted to put something on at the Palace. And I wanted to be in something at the Palace, which I've also happened to have never done. I've lit a million shows here. All my friends have been in shows at the Palace, and I've never done it. And I'm not really an actor in this, but I might, wander across the stage once or twice in it. And so that's a dream fulfilled. But yeah, there's no other space like it that I've ever even seen. There's certainly no other space like it locally. It's, are we coming up on 100th, right?
Big old centennial.
Big old centennial. It's a 100-year-old movie theater, and it's genuinely a movie theater. It's not like they put the screen into an existing venue. It's designed as a movie theater. This is what movie theaters used to look like. And most of them don't look like this anymore. And there are limitations to doing a show here because of that. Like the backstage is tiny; it's much smaller than a theater designed as a theatrical venue would have. There's certain difficulties with where you can put lights, stuff like that. But the experience of being in this space is like unduplicatable. The only place you can get something like this is in a 100-year-old movie theater, and there are others, but they're few and far between. And just the experience of being in the space is something that I'd always wanted to have be part of a project, that I was doing. So that is really nice.
What can audiences expect when they come to see Caesar live at the Palace?
Chaos, insurrection, betrayal, and revolution, and Shakespeare in a way that I think they'll understand. My big thing is that people think they can't understand Shakespeare, and they either blame themselves or they blame Shakespeare. And either way, it comes to the same thing. But it's usually a teacher's fault or a production's fault. And this is a show that is designed to reach out and grab people and make them follow and make them feel like they're part of the story. And everything about it and everything that everyone who's worked on it has done has been towards that end. So they can expect to experience a Shakespeare play, and which is a grand and terrifying thing,
Yeah, it's a very exciting show. It's an exciting way to use the Palace. It is fully immersive, which is something that I don't think people are going to be used to, and that's going to be really exciting. It's also educational. We have some younger actors in this show that are learning Shakespeare in school while they're also performing it on stage, and we hope that we see a lot of students of Shakespeare in the audience, because our actors have worked really hard to make it easy to understand, and because they're so good at what they do, they've made us cry several times while we've been in rehearsal.
Oh yeah, no,
they are
every
just,
night
they're beautiful. Their acting is beautiful and easily communicated to audience members, and so we hope that people of all ages, whether they're familiar with Shakespeare or not, are going to have a transformative experience from the show.
I just wanted to say thank you to our lovely guests, Theon and Angie, for being hopefully the first of many guests on the show and talking story with Kyden. You can get your tickets now at thehilopalace.com. Tickets are $15 general admission and $25 for VIP orchestra. And see you March 15th, opening night for Caesar at the Palace.
Beware the Ides of March.
Talk Story with Kyden.